Welcome to our Digital Ship webinar. Today we are exploring an interesting question. How do we get the right crew on the right vessels at the right time? And can software help? We'll search for the answer with our two guest speakers, Jens Uwe Strober, Senior Manager of HR and Senior Manager New Building Supervision at Carnival Maritime. Also, Anissa Rizvanoli, Team Leader of Maritime Scientific Computing and Optimization at Fraunhofer Center of Maritime Logistics. It's a final webinar from the series Making Crew Planning Easier, sponsored by Fraunhofer. Prepare to hear lots of new information. Also, submit your questions for the discussion via the Q&A box. Now I'm inviting Carl Jeffrey, founding editor of Digital Ship, to share some insights into today's topic.
Well, thank you, Vida. So what we're going to talk about today is crew planning. So that's how we decide how many people we're going to have on board vessels and who they should be and whether software can help us. So we want to make sure we've got the people we need to do what we need to do while managing the costs. Now, what's interesting maybe mostly here is that this is a subject most of us have never thought about. So, we think we're very constrained by regulations, who we can have on board, or we put the same people on board as we've had before, which usually works, or we're just guessing. So the question to discuss now is whether we can do better with the help of software, even if the software is just confirming what we knew already, but doing it in an objective way. That's kind of an improvement. Now, it's a very human task, planning who works on ships. There's a lot of expertise that goes into it. There's many constraints we think about. So regulations mainly, so international, national, your company rules, you've got manufacturer rules. You've also got regulations about how many people to have on watch at one time and regulation about what training to do. You've got maintenance work and you've got safety drills. And some sectors have their own special constraints, like the tanker shipping sector has got the time in rank requirements, and cruise ships have varying amounts of passengers they have to think about, and that affects the crew that you need. So it's not about whether computers can do this better than people. It's about whether computers plus people together can do it better. So we've got to basically program the computer to understand all these constraints, and the computer makes its calculation and gives it back to the human expert. But the computer can be objective, and it can also spot things which a person might not be able to spot or might not realize, or might be something that happened some other time that the computer can remember. So what we're looking to get is something very simple. What's the best possible calculation about how many people we need for a voyage? So we've got a great speaker today, Jens Uwe Strober, who's a senior manager human resources at Carnival Maritime. So they're the marine service unit of the Costa Group, which runs 27 cruise ships, part of the Carnival Group. So Carnival Maritime looks after the marine, technical, health, environment, safety and security, and so that's the deck and engine and the technical procurement. So Jens is going to talk about the methods and software tools they use to get the right crew on board at the right time, taking into account qualifications, regulations, and what needs to be done. So they've worked together with Fraunhofer, which makes software tools. So one test Fraunhofer did was to test the actual tasks that people do and how well the software matches it. And they found that the software was 90% right. So after Jens gives some opening thoughts, and Anissa Rizvanoli, who's a team leader, maritime scientific computing and optimization with Fraunhofer, is going to present her ideas and their approaches to using digital technology to make better plans for crew on board. So make sure we have enough people to do the work, and then we should have plenty of time for questions. So please load your questions in the Q&A. So I'd like to invite Jens to give his opening thoughts. So you're going to talk about some of the challenges in getting the right crew on board at the right time, and maybe how he started working with Fraunhofer and where it went. So I'd like to invite Jens to speak. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Carl. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having the possibility, the opportunity to talk about this issue. I suppose all of you are somehow working in shipping or related industries and are well aware of the problems or the challenges to get the right people and the right number on board and in the most efficient way. I worked in various shipping companies, from container, ro-ro, tankers, bulk, everything. Nowadays, I'm working as a last step since 4 years for the cruise industry. In the cruise industry, this this challenge is even more difficult because, as you probably know, we need a lot of people with a lot of qualifications. And the biggest challenges for us were, of course, the international, the national, and the company regulations. Money is not so much an issue because we are paying very well. This is not a problem. But what we are thinking about is our ships are, as you probably know, cities. Cities means we have a hotel which is swimming with a power plant, with an engine, with a big aircon, with big IT setups. So what we need the right people with the right qualification at the right time in the right manner. So what we were thinking, how to allocate our tasks in the best possible way. And in this respect, we somehow found Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer developed a program, it's so-called SCEDAS, and we are working since more than 2 years with this SCEDAS program. Of course, you have to do a lot of pre-work. You have to give a lot of thoughts with the specialists, with the subject matter experts. You have to define your processes and you have to feed the system with all your preconditions and with all your site conditions. For example, you have to consider the voyage. You have to consider STCW. You have to consider ILO. You have to consider MLC, all those things. And don't forget the flag state regulations, which are quite difficult in those days as well. If you have done this, you do, as I said, you feed it together with your processes and put this data into the system, in the so-called SCEDAS system. This is a computer program which is based on an arithmetical method and is calculating an optimized utilization of your crew, an optimized utilization of the tasks. Of course, this is one thing to do the calculation, but what we did as a second step, we verified the data on board. We put we called it task collectors on board, where all the tasks were predefined in a program. So the crew had to verify what we calculated versus what they are really doing. This, we carried out this process more than 1 year on 4 different ships, and verified the data later on in another process. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, 95% of our predefined tasks were correct. We were very happy with this result, and especially now, having all these restrictions with Corona and this, which is for us, as you can imagine, a big challenge as well. Serving guests means a cargo which is talking and which we have to protect from all these virus things. And we have to clean a lot of things. We have to do a lot of additional jobs. So we already have some results from our health protocols, which we fed to our SCEDAS program as well. The result of this is very interesting. On one hand, we could justify that we have the right crew with the right number on board on certain schedules. On other schedules, we found out we had not enough people or we had less people. So based on this, we could take our decisions together with our teams in the office. And this is a real fundamental decision for the so-called, we call it crew complement, means the number of people with the exact qualification and the knowledge. We have the intention to run this program more and more. And of course, we want to enroll it for the whole group, sharing our results and our positive impact and the positive outcome. I mean, I want to give you a short intro what we did and what you really can gain. To give you another example, but maybe we can talk about later, this plant maintenance, all task or unplanned maintenance. You can plan in a much better way because the computer program is 10 times or 100,000 times better than a normal human for planning. If you have a disturbance by whatever, a break, the program gives you options. You have to do by handwriting, by hand calculation to allocate your people in a new way. But the program is a big help. I hope this is, as my intro, good enough. I wanna refer to Anissa to explain a bit better how the program is working. And if you have more detailed questions, please let me know.
Oh, maybe just a couple of questions while you're there. So we've got a lot of our audience in other sorts of shipping companies. So like we were saying before, you think this is also relevant for other ships, even though they might be more constrained. So that's one thing I'd like to hear your thoughts about. And the other one is because ships get more technologically advanced, and we keep hearing that the demands on crew and training is getting more complicated. So maybe the demands of this kind of software is going to get, or the need for this kind of software is going to get more and more. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on those kind of points?
Let me put this way. The qualification of the crew is definitely one thing which is going on and on. And we all know technology in the future, especially digital technology, will be a big part of even for a normal ships operator, an engineer or nautical officer. This is what we learned as well. We have regular training and we have regular education schemes for those people, especially together with the manufacturer and together, let's say, with all participants on the ships. We have a close cooperation with the manufacturers, and this helps a lot.
Oh, so the complex mix of competencies is getting more and more complicated. You've got people who've done different courses.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm talking about the other ships. So you worked on car carriers before, you said. So you think this software would also be relevant for people who probably have less scope to change the manning on different ship types, perhaps?
I think maybe it's not changing significantly the manning, because as we all know, the number of crew on commercial ships is already on a very thin level. Nevertheless, it will help to allocate the jobs in the most efficient way, which you cannot do by hand calculation. So, and especially if you have a breakdown or some whatever disruption, the program gives you, let's say, the ideal solution when you can carry out the job. So this is a big help, which I can see. And even if the interaction with the superintendent or the technical staff ashore, or let's say the company who is supporting you in the port, it's a great tool to link the things in the most efficient way. And we all know time is the problem, especially for containers, for RO, whatever. So you save a hell of time in the ports for the company, for the ship, for the crew, for everyone.
Wow. Then maybe one last question, and people always want to quantify benefits. I mean, you said a lot of benefits, but in terms of actually where the specific benefits are, I guess you've got work better done, you've managed your costs better. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, of course, I'm not entitled to talk about figures here, and I don't want to talk about our money here. All what I can tell you, we have significant savings. We are talking about millions, for sure.
Wow, oh, that's very rare we hear people say that in a digital ship webinar, that the numbers are so big. Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, it's there are huge savings if you use the program properly, but you don't use it once. It's an ongoing process, and you judge yourself, you check your processes, and there is always a flow. It means there is always a change, and you have to adjust yourself, you have to adjust the ship, you have to adjust the education, the training. So it's an ongoing process.
Wow, well, that's fantastic. Hopefully this sets up Anissa's talk. So we're talking about software which can save millions of dollars for one company. So now we're going to hear how it's done. So I'd like to welcome Anissa.
Yeah, thank you. Also, Hello from my side. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you, Jens, for a very, very nice introduction to SCADAS. I will, of course, like to give some more technical insights to it. I hope you can see my screen. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's the complex planning that also Jens talked about. We want to enable a reliable determination of adequate crew consistency and work schedule by taking into account the human resources, basically the qualifications behind them, the regulations, the voyage-specific workload, and the maintenance, which is of course specific for ship and for shipping companies. And maybe for the one for the one who are listening to us now and couldn't join the last two webinars, this is the holistic picture. Jens talked a little bit about this task-based work hour recording. So we have implemented some tools that gather data on board of the ships. We analyze them and put them as input for the scheduling algorithms, which at the end calculate the crew demand and work schedules. This can be on office, on a strategic part, just calculating how many people do I need theoretically, but it can also be used on board, which is the focus of the talk today, to calculate the crew schedules with as less non-conformities as possible, because we know everyone from the real life. If on a container ship there are 22 persons, it is impossible to run the whole voyage without any incompliance. But it's important to spread the workload in such a way that not only one person, like the chief engineer, the chief officer, is 2 days incompliant and cannot really rest enough. And maybe for a short recapitulation, what was SCADAS Office for? That is the part where also Jens talked a little bit about thinking about your processes, putting them into tasks, and let the program calculate the minimum crew complement that you need for the specific ship, specific voyage, in order that you are full compliant. This is the main result. So you get your work schedule in a very detailed way, the task assigned to the right persons at the right time. And maybe important for decision makers is this view of it, which shows how is the crew complement and how is the crew demand enhanced, spread or distributed by during the voyage. And of course, as we may also think it's natural that you have higher crew demand in ports than during transit times. But coming to onboard, in comparison to office, in office we calculate the theoretical part. So we say how many people do I really need to be always full compliant. So the office module has as many people as you wish basically. But in onboard we have our limited available crew. They have their worked hours, and you have a voyage that may change. So that's not like you define it at the beginning and it never changed. Maybe for cruise lines, not so much because they have their schedule, but for other types of vessels like cargo vessels or even tanker ships that don't really have a schedule. Basically, it calculates, it's similar, the calculation, but with the main difference that you have your crew scheduled, and some of the crew cannot be really scheduled in a compliant way. The program tries to minimize it and shows you what kind of non-compliance happened there and why it could not be avoided, because the workload is is too much for the very short period of time that they have. One of the main advantages of having SCADAS on board is the possibility to react to changes in a voyage plan. As I mentioned previously, a container ship, they are not always punctual taking the ATA to a port. Sometimes it is like the port is not ready to get them, or they are too early, they arrive too early due to some weather conditions. So unexpected delay, they have to go for anchorage. Anchorage is one of a part of the voyage with the highest workload, because as many of you may know, you have to prepare the anchor, you have to do all the procedures to do it safely, and to wait until you can again begin with the anchor procedures to take it up, to take it out and arrive to the port. And this means a lot of your crew schedule, as it was mentioned, to be it's not valid anymore. It's not valid anymore. So you have to recalculate. You can do it by in a manual way, but you can also let SCADAs do it for you. And it will recalculate the whole work schedule in such a way that the tasks are assigned to the next best qualified seafarer, so that the ones who are affected by the anchorage are free to do the anchorage. This is one possible way. The next one would be, as I said, to the work and rest hours. We consider what the seafarers have worked, and if shipping companies do not have an extra a software tool for digitally saving the work and rest hours, we have an add-on for that, but that's not our main product. It's just an add-on for the ones who don't have such kind of tools. Otherwise, we write an interface to the existing tools and take into consideration the work and rest hours. And one further trigger for changing the work schedule is when the work and rest hours change. When someone is just putting them and say, well, okay, let me take the example of the chief engineer and some other junior engineers that had a major overhaul in the last 2 days. They have been working like 10 hours or 11 hours every day, and put this into SCADAs and it recalculates. So basically maybe the program drops them out because they have worked too much, and recalculate the whole tasks, put them into other persons who are qualified for them, by making all these persons non-compliant, but by distributing this non-compliant in a very fair way, let me say that like this. Or even if this happens, like the ordinary seaman, in this case, he is ill, he becomes ill. We have it with Corona, of course, nowadays. So he has he cannot work, and the work needs anyhow to get done because the ship is still sailing. So you can sit there as chief officer and sit there for 2 hours and try to reschedule so that everybody is fine, but a computer does it for you within 2 minutes. And that's the major advantage of having such decision support tools also on board and not only in the office. But of course, the main requirement for this is that someone or a lot of people has put into this system all these tasks. So as coming back to what Jens said, it's not like using this program once and it's done. You always have to take your data up to date. And if the processes on your company are changing, then they have to somehow be mapped into the task. So you always have to update your processes, your procedures. If maybe your plant maintenance strategy changed, then the work schedule looks different. So if you move from checking your systems once a month to once a week, then you suddenly have twice workload than before, 4 times more workload than before, that needs to be scheduled in the right way to the right persons. And well, where do we have mentioned it before, but I wrote the slide with me. These are some of our previous and actual partner. Carnival Maritime is our actual partner. We have begun the journey with Bernhard Schulte. Offen Group has been also a long-term partner of us, and Columbia Ship Management which has provided us with the plant maintenance data and has been able to deliver us data from ships and test some proof of concept for the plant maintenance. I mentioned them before, the SCADA's onboard benefits. Well, of course, you have significant time saving for operators because the computer does it for you, the calculation of the work schedules. You are able to calculate in a very flexible way different work schedules when everything changes, and with a higher quality, you have an improved controllability of the work schedules, instead of just talking to the people or keeping in mind that someone has worked so many hours in the last night. General benefits for SCADAs is, of course, the optimized crew demand, the assessment of time, for example, for maintenance tasks. You can do risk assessment, where you can test different work and rest hours scenarios. You can do different scenarios for maintenance strategies, for example, but one of the main advantages is this transparency through data-driven basis for discussion and, of course, informed decision-making processes for crewing budgets, which is one of the largest part of ship operating costs, as many of you also may know. Maybe one more short excursion to another problem, because I think we have enough time, is the similar problem. We have been talking to the short-term scheduling. So we have been talking to a voyage, one ship, and the exact task that you need to plan into that ship in order to be compliant, and also to calculate how many people you put on the ships. But there is another problem which is upon it, and this is the fleet-wide long-term crew scheduling. Imagine you have now 400 ships and 14,000 seafarers, and you do like 700 crew changes a year, and try to plan the seafarers in a long term, so basically a contract, a yearly contract, in such a way that all your fleet requirements, in such a way that you comply with all the fleet requirements. And some companies nowadays are doing this by 20 planners sitting at the office and making that in an experience-based way into subsets of the whole fleet. And would be great if the natural way would be to do an automatic planning of that, because it's too complex. You have, as similar to SCADA, similar to this short-term planning, you have to take into account your crew change requirements, that you cannot do crew changes at any port that you wish to. You have to take into account that your ship voyage may change, the seafarers' availability at all, and the contract types. So one of the main aims of shipping companies is to bind the seafarers to themselves. So not to change so much, so to have a long-term good collaborations with good seafarers, but you can achieve this by providing them with minimum deviation from their availability dates. So one of two main objects that we have recognized in an R&D project that we did with all this data was the minimization of crew change and travel costs, which is of course saving costs for the shipping companies, but also the minimization of the deviation from the contract dates, which make the shipping companies in a better position in the whole market and enables the long-term collaboration with the seafarers. Of course, you have to comply with experience and qualification requirements, which was everything put into another mathematical model that we developed for that at the end calculates basically who are the guys who are going to man the position of master for the whole year. So you see here the contracts, and here basically a view of how does it, it's in German, but it means basically the experience time. So for some tanker ships, there are some restrictions, like, for example, the master and the chief together should have at least 10-year experience running on that specific ship in order to run it safely. And these are requirements that cannot really be checked very manually or not in an optimal way. You can check them manually, you can have a lot of experience, but if you are talking about 400 ships and 40,000 seafarers, that's obvious that it's not going to be optimal if you do it in an experience-based way. And at that specific research and development project, we basically calculated crew change costs and compared them with the way of doing them as it is right now, current state, decentralized and manual, by moving to centralized and automatic way, where you take into account the whole fleet. In that case, we choose 20 ships, 400 seafarers and 1 year, and we saw that we can reduce the crew cost by that factor that you see here, so $500,000 to $300,000. And all of it, you can say that this also enables a reliable decision support based on mathematical optimization, and helps the shipping company to save costs on one side and to increase the retention rate by stable long-term crew plans on the other side. And I have brought with me a comparison of the minimization, deviation of contract duration between the manual planning and the optimized planning. And this is our vision at Fraunhofer, to combine these two problems, which are of course related to each other. So you need for SCADAs the input of which kind of qualifications do you want to get manned, and from the fleet-wide long long-term planning, you put the persons to this qualification for a longer time. And if they are combined together, then shipping companies can, of course, not only save money, but be more, provide a higher qualitative crew scheduling in a holistic way. So from the long term to the very short term planning, day-to-day scheduling with SCADAs. And well, that's all from my side. I think I've talked enough now. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them right now in the Q&A session. But of course, you can contact me either per email, telephone, as you wish.
Wow, well, that's fantastic. So I'd like to invite the audience, if you have any questions, to put them in the Q&A box. And meanwhile, I've got a few of mine, so maybe I'll ask mine for now. Jens is still there. I'm really interested in the human side of this. So there's lots of issues we've discussed. So one is people feel like they already know the answers to this. So Jens, if you imagine the people watching the webinar are the digital enthusiasts in the maritime industry who have to go home to their companies and talk to the people who aren't that excited about software, and somebody says, I know all this already. How would they persuade them? I suppose, I mean, one of them is showing these enormous benefits. I suppose that's one thing, but I guess people need some encouragement. Is that something you have any thoughts about? You're on mute.
Thanks, Carl.
Yeah.
Of course, what we need nowadays is we need open-minded people. I think it's not a secret that we have to go new ways in order, let's say, to improve ourselves, to improve the situation and to tackle the future. I'm sure if you are not looking into this field in, let's say, data-driven support for your business, you are more or less out. So it's difficult. Some people are open-minded, some not, but what shall I say?
Oh, and then what about the crew side? So Anissa was showing, there's some sort of help people develop their careers, but also if the crew get the wind that this is about cutting crew costs, they're not going to support it. How do the crew feel about this? How do you show it to them?
I think personally, I'm thinking the biggest challenge will be there is no doubt the costs will increase in the future for crew to get qualified, motivated people. There's no doubt about it. For me, the most important thing is to keep your costs under control. It means if you have an increase per year, let's say 2-3%, you can live with that. But if you have a jump of 10, 15, 20%, you are definitely not competitive anymore. So this is how I see it. So it's better, you're always advanced if you do something which is unknown and not so common yet, versus you are sitting where you are. And to be frank and fair, we all know shipping is a very conservative business. The people did for 40, 50 years what they ever did. And I know very well it's extremely difficult, especially if you have private owners, to convince them for a new idea. If they don't see benefits in short, it's extremely difficult to keep going on this. Nevertheless, we have now a new generation as owners, and I suppose it's easier to convince them because they are grown up with digital transformation. This is how I see it. Keep trying.
Yeah, well, there has been a lot of bad software in shipping, and people have had bad experiences. So they're often justified in saying, "I think I can make a better decision myself." Than I guess it's all a.
You're absolutely right, Carl. But one thing is sure, and we are talking about crewing systems or whatever. A system is as good as the data are in, shit out. It is very simple. Systems, if they are not totally crap, they are differing marginal. This is, and with Fraunhofer, we have the opportunity to support the development and to feed our ideas. This is why we have a relationship or build up a relationship with Fraunhofer, because it's a very good interaction. So I can really recommend this.
Oh, that's great. And in terms of the benefits, I mean, you said it might be quite difficult to talk about, well, you can't talk about numbers, but we're not just talking about reducing crew costs, we're also talking about getting stuff done better. So there's a kind of positive side as well as just reducing the number of crew we have, isn't it? I mean, there's benefits in both.
If you don't follow your plant maintenance, it's a matter of time when the next problem is occurring, and it costs money in the end. So, and it's the same with unplanned, or let's say unforeseen technical issues. As sooner as better you are solving them, as more costs you are saving. It's a simple thing.
Yeah, oh, that sounds great. Okay. So Anissa, well, one interesting thing, so you were showing the difference between the long-term planning and the short-term planning, and they're both very important. And I guess companies have to do both of these. So the short-term is who's doing what at which time, and the long-term is people moving off and moving on. And the software has to do both of these in one big calculation, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes, and we have it right now. We have two different models for them. We have not combined them, but it's our vision to combine them, because it's the natural way it goes. So you get your contract, and then you're planned for the specific ship. So basically, SCADAS delivers some kind of constraints for the fleet-wide planning. So you need for safe manning, or because SCADAS has calculated that some special positions to be manned, and then you try in the long term run to find the best persons that fits there, to find the best contract that fits this position which it needs to be manned. And both of them provide for the seafarer the possibility of high quality scheduling in terms of long term, the contract, and the deviation from it should be minimized. This is that scope of the long term, and minimizing rest hours non-conformities in short term, which is both very good for the seafarers, and in long term for the collaboration between the seafarer and the shipping company, because every long-term collaboration is much better than switching persons in any industry.
Oh, yeah. And then in terms of setting up, I mean, we don't want people to think it's a black box. I mean, there must be another side of it where there's really complicated configuration, and you can put in new things like the corona requirements and crew changes in different ports. And I guess that's something that you probably wouldn't want to show, but maybe you want to describe how that works, or maybe that's enough.
Yes, of course. It's from the setup part. We basically deliver the software or the whole system to the shipping companies, and provide them with support to define the data and to modify. And also we try to document what are their special needs, because we know it's obvious that a container shipping company has different requirements than a cruise liner, because the work on board is so much different. And you have some company-specific procedures that needs to get involved into that. And this is the specific part that we put into the implementation, and we do always a kind of customization for that specific company. So we don't sell a system out of the box, and it won't be possible in the near future to do that, because they are quite different, and that's the main advantage of having it for your own company and for your own needs. Otherwise, you can also get an Excel sheet and put some colors into that, and that's a plan. But that's, yeah.
Well, that's great. If anybody in the audience has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom. But another thing I'd like to ask, so this thing about the 300,000 hours check that was 95% accurate. Do you want to talk a little bit more, maybe Jens as well? What exactly were you doing? So you did the model in advance, you did the schedule, and then you counted what people are actually doing, and you compared that to what the computer thought. So it's basically a way of assessing how good the software is. Is that I don't know if you'd like to answer that one, or Jens, looks like you're about to spot.
Yeah, as I told in the beginning, of course, we set up the model before, and we verified on board on 4 ships with a so-called, we called it task collector. It means every crew member could insert what they did. Of course, we predefined the menu. And as I said, the result was that 95% of our assumption was correct. What I'm saying, and what I have to admit, the pre-work you do, as better the pre-work, as better is the result. So you have to give them a lot of thought.
It's more or
And-
less.
And if I may say, Fraunhofer is supporting the idea and is guiding you in a way, you know, that digital is possible what you are thinking from your experience. So it's just quite flexible.
You are somewhere in between, you are in the trade-off between doing it very, very detailed, which makes a lot of work to put the data in and doesn't really help in the analysis. It's not the way that you want to plan your persons on a 5-minute slot, but you want to put everything together, and the trade-off between this and making it general, but not too general, so that it's not realistic anymore. That's, yeah.
You have to find the granularity which is suitable for you.
Wow, Jens, there's a question popped up from Ravi Rayo. I've looked up Ravi on LinkedIn. There's lots of people in the maritime industry, but he's asking about crew retention. Do you find this helps with the crew retention if seafarers like it more, or something else you'd like to share about the crew retention point out?
I don't think it has a direct impact, and
Oh.
at least we didn't find out yet.
Yeah.
There's no correlation as far as I can see.
Oh, you don't find that crew feel happier if they can see their work's been more carefully planned and it's more transparent? Well, we didn't talk about how this software actually use it. I mean, I've seen that image of the crew seeing the scheduling software. If the crew can see the,
We have no proof yet, so it's too early to say.
Yeah.
okay. I mean, if the crew hated it, presumably you'd know by now.
No, to be frank and fair, and as you all know, new things people don't like. You have to convince them. Even we have an ongoing discussion with this, because some people feel controlled, some people feel, I don't know, trapped or so, you know. You have a lot of good people, but you have a lot of better people. So.
Oh. Did you want to say how you're actually using it in the company? It's not like you're sitting in the office giving everyone the schedule and they have to deal with it. Other people can see the charts, can they? And people in the crew can make changes if they want to. Is that how?
We exchange, of course, some information to keep transparency and to keep them in the boat. Otherwise, system is not accepted.
Yeah, and that's very, very important, isn't it? Because you know, people think the computer's telling me to do this now, and why on earth are they doing that? And yeah.
But as Anissa said, the scheduling of the tasks, if you convince the chief engineer and he is seeing, it really helps. It's easy going.
Yeah. I mean, I would have.
We have to make kind of proof of concept for
Exactly.
that it really does decision support, that it supports you in your decision, your work, when you are the planner, the one guy on board responsible for 20 others and wants to plan them. And if you accept it as a decision support, as a help tool, help add-on, then it's fine. And this is how it is meant to be. It's not like we calculate and the persons and the security guards or the seafarers have to work exactly like that. That's just a support tool. Yeah,
there's a lot of discussions in the industry at the moment about competency management frameworks, you know, which I imagine this is a kind of another half of the same thing. If you're a seafarer, you know, your competency management is one thing and your scheduling management is another thing. But the more people understand about how it all works,
it's part of in the end.
Yes, I can also admit that. I mean, we are talking here about tasks and qualifications. So at somehow in SCADAS, you have a mapping between a position and a task over the qualification. That's what's in the background. So there were one guy who is defining that, knows that that the master is qualified for that task, or that the rating with a specific keeping license is not qualified. And in the near future, maybe we can just read it out automatically from some other systems to where this all qualifications is written down in a digital and well-defined way. The main challenge right now is that shipping companies does not have it in such specific digital way. It's somewhere in the letters, in the job descriptions, but not really specified.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, I think we're coming to the end now, so maybe sort of some closing remarks. I mean, what strikes me is all the trends in the industry are pushing for more and more of this thing. We've got complexity rising, the crew costs are rising, the use of digital technology is rising, the pressure on the costs is increasing, and all seems to be driving more and more use of this. So I would have thought, you know, we're going to see a lot more of this in 5 years' time. If companies don't use this system like this, they probably will do soon. I don't know. Maybe Anissa and then Jens, if you'd like to make us closing remarks, or where you think we're going with this.
I'm sure there is no way out. For sure, there will be other systems as well, but it's a good start, I think. And from there, you can evolve. I'm very much sure in the future we will see much more of such projects, and I think the big shipping companies, they have no chance to escape, because scale of economy works here as well. So in the end, I'm very positive, and I think even for people who are not so much convinced, I think it's a good chance to learn more and more and to develop yourself, to get in a new field of technology which you can use in many kinds of. So I'm always a guy who is thinking, what is new? Shipping shouldn't become boring, so we have to do something new.
Some people only move when they really have to, and some people are, you're at the front of the
I try at least. Come on. I mean, there are better ones.
Anissa, do you want to have some closing words?
Yes, of course. I do agree with Jens. Well, I think that the crew scheduling issue is quite challenging everywhere, not only in the maritime industry. So we see it, the airline is dealing with it like 30 years now, and it's challenging, but it's not impossible to be solved by means of some mathematical models and digitalization and having the data very clear in the right way into some databases. So data-based approaches and mathematical approach has the big advantage that they are generic, so that you can decouple between the model and the solution. And if solution methods evolve, then you can put them on the model and see what happens with the new method. So you do an invest, basically you do a good invest for the future. If you do it once, it costs a lot at the beginning, but it's once. So you do this invest for a very long-term future.
Oh, so lots of people maybe aren't thinking about scheduling now, but we think they probably will, and more and more of it. That's great. So thank you very much. And I'll pass back to Vida to close things, I think. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. So this webinar is closing Digital Ship series with Fraunhofer. We hope you get out from it with a better understanding on crew planning, made easier with digital tools, and what mathematical models can do to optimize planning. All 3 webinars will be available for you to review free of charge on Digital Ship YouTube channel that you may share with your colleagues and partners who struggle with crewing decisions, whether they are in IT, maintenance, safety or management departments. Now Digital Ship is signing off. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.